You didn't vote for it. There was a brief debate in Parliament, but there was no vote. No one asked you. And yet in June 2019, the face of Britain changed forever. Because in June, Britain became the first country in the world to make net zero by 2050 a legally binding commitment. Now, we'd already signed the Paris Climate Accord and the UN's Agenda 30 in 2015, and again, no one voted for that either, including Parliament. But 2019 changed everything. Because this time, you see, it wasn't just policy or advisory or best efforts. It became a law that's now reshaping and bankrupting our entire economy. And you know what? That seismic change was passed in just 90 minutes. There was no vote, bit of a squabble. And today, that law is changing our entire society without your consent. And it always will, unless the law is entirely repealed. Now, Theresa May's government quietly amended an existing act called the Climate Change Act of 2008 to commit us to this net zero carbon emissions by 2050 legal thing. But it wasn't in any manifesto. You didn't even know it was happening. But it made net zero a legal obligation across the whole country. And it means that every future government is bound by it. The courts can enforce it no matter what party is in power. It overrides democracy and nobody asked you. According to their wording, net zero means the UK becomes CO2 neutral. In my wording, it's just a mind-numbingly stupid act of self-sabotage so that we can virtue seek about something they can't even quantify, and that we've mostly offshored to some other poor country anyway. But let's focus on what it's doing to us as a country today. I mean, the headlines, you've seen the headlines. Petrol and diesel cars being banned, gas boilers being phased out, and more expensive to run and install heat pumps are being forced on us. Our energy will be controlled by smart meter. Energy prices are rising, and no, they will not fall. You're being nudged into behavioural changes, driving less, eating less meat. Households face mandatory green upgrades. Thousands of jobs in traditional energy sectors are being lost. Agricultural land is being swallowed up by Chinese-made solar panels that can't be recycled, making us far less food secure. Wind turbines are being subsidised by billions of pounds of bill payers' money because those companies can't even make their own profit. And billions more are being poured into risky experiments like carbon capture machines and hydrogen schemes, none of which work at scale anywhere in the world. And remember, all of this is happening because of a law made in just 90 minutes. And here's where it gets really dodgy, right? You'd think a law that could change the face of civilization itself, and I mean that, I am not even being dramatic. You'd think a law like that would be a standalone mega document taking months, perhaps years to debate in Parliament and then in the House of Lords, perhaps some public consultation, maybe even a referendum. But no. It was passed using what's called a statutory instrument. That's just a legal shortcut. Normally, they use one of those for tweaking regulations, not for overhauling the economy and the entire of society and its way of life. It's insane. Even Philip Hammond, who was the Chancellor at the time, was left out of the decision-making. And he wrote afterwards that the transition to net zero would cost over £1 trillion. And he warned that it would mean less funding for schools, hospitals, police, and all other services. Oh, hello there.
Hello there.
Isn't that happening right now? Yes, it is. He also said there had been no proper economic analysis. No shit, Sherlock, because there still isn't, and we're in 2025. Lord Lilly called it the most expensive legislation ever put before Parliament, passed with no costings, no impact statement, and no scrutiny. He also called it virtue signalling at monumental cost. He was right. No one listened to him. Graham Stringer, a Labour MP, said, MPs were bounced into this decision without a clue what they were signing us up to. Well, most MPs were terrified of looking anti-environment, so I'm sure that's why they waved it through. But the level of incompetence in our Parliament is absolutely horrifying. So scared of their reputation, they didn't even bother questioning it. So who pushed it then? Well, step forward, the Committee on Climate Change, the QUANGO that runs the country. And if you've watched the QUANGO video down here, you'll know about QUANGOs and what's happening in our democracy. But let's just take the CCC in this instance. This is a taxpayer QUANGO created in 2008 by the Climate Change Act, the one that Theresa May amended. And it was created under Gordon Brown's Labour government. Ed Miliband set it up himself when he was the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, and his brother Dave was Foreign Secretary. Both of them were deeply embedded in UN climate talks and the birth of Agenda 30 at the UN. The CCC was supposedly set up to advise government, but in practice, it doesn't advise, it rules. It writes the roadmaps, and they are just signed straight through. So it does things like climate budgets every 5 years. It designs net zero policy by sector, including energy, transport, food, housing. It advises all UK governments, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and it works with activist lawyers to pressure government in court if it misses its targets. This committee operates with absolutely no public mandate or scrutiny at all. And when it started, the chair at the time of the law was Lord Deben, former Tory Environment Secretary. And Lord Deben also ran a company called Sancroft International, which is a consultancy advising clients on sustainability strategy. And yeah, this dual role of his did raise conflict of interest concerns, especially as some of Sancroft's clients benefited, of course, from policies promoted by this CCC. In fact, investigative reports, including parliamentary questions and media articles, well, they flagged that firms had received over £600,000 in green subsidies, also paid Sancroft for consultancy work, whilst Lord Deben was chairman. Now, I do want to make it quite clear here that Lord Deben denied any wrongdoing and was cleared by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner, but it does highlight how the CCC has close associations with businesses and organisations that stand to gain from its policies, rather than those who may be negatively affected or excluded, which suggests that at best, this QUANGO cannot be considered fully balanced, given how closely aligned it is with those who profit from its recommendations, right? And the members of this committee themselves move between government departments and the UN and the WEF working groups. They move to ESG investment firms, big consultancies, climate lobbying NGOs. And then there's Nigel Topping. Well, he's the current CCC chair, and he's also, surprise, surprise, a former UN employee, high-level climate champion for the COP26. And he has deep links to business coalitions like the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Again, he is completely unelected by anyone in the UK. There is no balance or independence in a government committee when it only plays one side of the field. Yeah? So, the CCC is not really a British creation. It's part of a transnational policy pipeline. It takes its cues from the UN Agenda 30, the World Economic Forum, and the CCC themselves have appeared on panels and co-authored net zero strategy papers and global toolkits like the World Economic Forum's Clean Power Transition Toolkit, the UN's Race to Net Zero campaign, the C40 Cities Mandate. And in 2021, the UK helped launch the Global Digital Climate Alliance under the World Economic Forum's Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. See, these ideas aren't British grown. They don't come from us. They're imported. And then they're implemented by the unelected CCC because the legislation in 2019 became law. Once the CCC makes a decision, it then spreads everywhere throughout the civil service, through education, in their climate-baked school curriculums, through Ofcom, who regulate speech on climate misinformation, through transport, through housing, through local authorities and councils, even through the Advertising Standards Agency, which bans adverts which criticise net zero. And government departments just obey, without you ever having a say, without your MP ever having a say, actually, probably without you even knowing. And would this law have happened if you had been asked? Well, you know, I really don't think so. We had a referendum on the EU, and the changes imposed after that vote are nothing in comparison with the enormity of this new net zero mandate. We had a referendum on Scottish independence. We hold consultations with the public, even to build a bypass. But for this, for the biggest economic and social transformation in modern history, we got nothing. No costings, no consent, no opinions, because they didn't want your opinion or your permission. And the reason they didn't is because they knew you would say no. So next time you hear that net zero is settled, or that this is what the public wants, ask yourself, when were you asked? What do you think? Let me know. Thank you for listening. Until next time on If This Is True.